Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center. And for more than 20 years, nearly 30 now, I've been working with owners of accounting, bookkeeping, and tax businesses to help them actually build their companies, thriving accounting services, offering quality services, and getting paid what they're worth. As a show, we actually have on the show guests, experts in their own right as to what it is we can be doing as business leaders to be more effective in servicing our clients. Here's going to be a wonderful conversation. So I invite you to listen as I've got Rick Haskell. This is a gentleman I've known for nearly 3 decades now. In fact, perhaps more than 3 decades, as we've actually been business colleagues and more importantly, friends over those years. And I'm excited to kind of recap our history together and more importantly, share some insights that I'm sure you have. So Rick, welcome to the show.
Roger, it's great to be with you and wonderful to connect.
Yeah. So Rick, your history is quite elaborate. I'm going to just summarize it as I know it, but you're going to fill in the gaps. We met one another in the 90s when you were a vice president in a film studio company. And I had the fortunate opportunity of not only working there, but going through a management training program. From there, you've run a business, which I was I participated in and was very happy to have been involved with it. And then from there, you've moved along in your career selling a business. And ultimately, you're now the dean at Westminster working with individuals as it relates to their careers and their prospects as students. So what kind of addition would you add to that history?
Well, that's a lot, and you talk very fast, as it turns out. So I'm gonna correct an item here, just out of fairness.
Yes.
So Westminster University has been the university at which I've been a finance professor and director of a Center for Financial Wellness.
Oh, yes.
For the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Western Governors University is where I am currently one of the deans of the business school. And I had to choose 2 universities with almost the exact name, right?
Yes.
Just to make it confusing for people.
Well, it worked.
Yeah, I obviously so. You know, it has been a long time. In fact, you and I tend to run into each other in the most interesting places.
Yes.
One of the last times I saw you was on the streets of Palmyra, New York.
Yes, I'm glad you remembered that.
I did. In fact, I looked at you and I thought, that looks like Roger Knecht. I thought, no, that can't be. And there it was. And I couldn't have been happier to have seen you. And then I think I saw you here just a few months ago as well somewhere.
Yes.
Wait, was it at our business conference or was it somewhere else?
It was the 10,000 Small Business Conference with Goldman Sachs.
Yes. Yeah, I participate in that program as one of the mod faculty, and I have the opportunity to teach about 100 small business owners a year the financial nature of their businesses, which very few of them want to hear about. They don't want to grapple with. You deal with that in the accounting industry day in and day out. They don't want to, and they desperately need to.
That's right. Well, one of the things that I find fascinating is I also went through that program.
Right.
And you're correct. I do have a tendency to lean into the numbers, manage by the numbers, but the program actually touches on a number of facets related to running a successful company, all of which are essential. And so through that program, I was able to apply many of those principles to Universal Accounting and found it a rewarding experience. Because we started there, let's kind of dive a little bit more into it. Not only how did you get involved, but the financial side of the training, let's say, that you're offering to the business owners. What do you hope that they're taking from that training itself?
Well, I got involved now about 7 years ago.
Okay.
Another faculty member at Westminster University was a participant in this program from a faculty standpoint.
Okay.
And invited me to come in and talk a little bit about how I would approach things. That then led to, 7-year relationship where I've dealt now with, I think it's 19 cohorts of business owners coming through what is referred to as the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program.
Yep, that's right.
But there are now approximately 17,000 graduates of that program. So we've surpassed 10,000 and it operates in, I believe it's 20 or 21 sites across the country. I believe it's the premier small business program in the country today. And I say that participating in a few of them locally as well as nationally. But it's a program where the Goldman Sachs Foundation very generously funds it. The business owners coming into it, they don't pay.
Correct.
They spend a lot of time.
Yes.
And they are given what some people refer to as a mini MBA program.
That's fair.
I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that, but clearly it gives them a great perspective on business, their business as an asset and a business.
Yeah.
And some of the modules are financial, some are leadership, some are marketing, some
Mm-hmm.
it goes across the board.
Yes.
And there's some great former business owners that are business advisors in the program. But better still, there are great faculty members, and anybody that participates in that becomes part of a cohort, which is part of a larger alumni group. And I think that's some of the best value of it, is that cohort opportunity. I'm a big fan of it, and just because I know of some similar programs across the country, and I know the quality of this one. So I became involved there in addition to the work that I have been doing at Westminster University as a finance professor and leading one of our centers at Westminster. And I'll continue to be involved now that I've made a transition to Western Governors University in a more leadership role.
Very good. Now, in all of that, what do you hope that they're actually taking from the finance portion of the training they're experiencing? Because you indicated this at the beginning. Many of them aren't drawn to the numbers.
Right.
They get into business because they're very passionate about the product or service they offer. That's what they know. They know how to market it. They know how to fulfill it. But the running of the business, the nuances of the finance, having the capital to run the business, to be profitable, those are some things that elude them oftentimes, especially when they're starting out as an organization or as a company. What are you hoping they learn or take from that finance portion?
That's a good question. And I'll lead with what I hope they don't get out of it.
Okay.
That I don't want them to become the bookkeeper. I don't want them to become the accountant for their business.
Very good.
They're a business owner. I want them to go out and make rain. I want them to lead and run a successful business, provide vision, innovation, and such. But what I want them to get out of the financial part is the recognition that there are two types of business owners: those that understand their numbers,
Okay.
and those who are controlled by other people who understand their numbers.
Interesting.
And I don't think anybody gets into business today to be controlled by others.
Yeah.
So I simply want them to be able to be engaged in the conversation in a relevant way when their business's numbers are being discussed. I want them to understand these things. I don't want them to be expert at them. I don't want them to do the jots and the tittles. I want them to be able to be engaged in the conversation in a relevant, robust way so they can make good, common sense decisions.
You know, one of the things that I enjoyed about the experience myself, having gone through the program, is in that exercise, there are case studies.
Yes.
And there's various things where you get to now kind of take a theoretically a real world situation and try and put numbers to it. But the part that was quite helpful, and you've alluded to it with the cohort portion, is the interaction you have with the other business owners,
Right.
other perspectives on a similar situation. But what's fascinating to me is oftentimes these are successful business owners. They're running their own companies, and yet here they are needing to be a peer to someone else. They can't necessarily be the one who speaks up the most or runs the show. They have to now collaborate. They have to compromise. And so in those conversations, it's an interesting thing to observe how people who may be the alpha in their organization now have to collaborate with others. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And not just collaborate, but cooperate.
Yes.
And that's when you're the person that everyone looks to 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Sometimes it's hard to remember that you've got to cooperate as well.
Yeah.
And so I absolutely agree with that. You know, I think one of the values and virtues of the program is that it is designed to help people who have accomplished or achieved some level of success in their business go much, much further. You have to qualify to be part of this program. And if I remember correctly, out of every 3 applicants, there's typically only one individual or one business that qualifies.
Interesting.
So there's some selectivity, but there's always the opportunity for one's business to continue to grow and apply again in the future when it's gotten a little bit more mature, if you will.
Yeah. Very good. I'm enjoying this conversation, but I'm going to kind of move the
Yes.
nature of the conversation a little bit further. I'm going to go back in history because I think there's a few nuggets that we can dive into here and really help the audience learn a few things that I feel are applicable. One is I was involved with a management training program that I
Yes.
think you were involved with. It was with Nancy Reynolds. I was there at the Orem office, went through a management training program, and I felt that that was very instrumental in my career. It was early on. It was in my 20s. And as I experienced it, one of the things that I was exposed to were some management principles or business principles that were new to me at the time, and they still resonate with me today. And I was just wanting to ask, as you reflect on a management training program, whether it is the one I'm referring to or others. What do you think are a key component of a management training program for individuals who haven't had management experience? They're maybe moving from employee to management. What are you hoping in a management training program they experience or that they should learn?
Oh, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
So I think one of the first things that we need to help people understand is the difference between being a line worker, a responsible manager, and a leader,
Uh-huh.
because they're very different roles, and each one helps and supports the other. I'm a big believer in always thinking about what's the responsibility of the others, the other two that maybe I am not, and that then helps me be better at whatever role it is that I have. So I think that's important. I think it's important to, in a management role, understand behind every business is someone or someones who have committed capital.
Interesting.
Some of their life's savings or treasure.
Yes.
And our job as managers is to protect the equity value of those stakeholders. I mean, it is our fiduciary responsibility in a Western society and in a capitalist society. Like that or not, it is our responsibility. And so sometimes when we're the line worker, we don't think about that. Sometimes even when we're the manager, we don't stop to think about that. But as a manager, that is my responsibility. I have been entrusted with some of the capital of the owners of this company to be able to create resources surplus for them. That's my job. And if we can help them understand that and then simultaneously recognize that we do that best when we support all facets and aspects of the organization. Not take advantage of, not usurp, but support. Because the most productive and most profitable organizations are the organizations where people feel supported, where they feel as though they have the opportunity to innovate, where they can tell truth to power, where they can make mistakes and not just be blamed for them, but to recognize, okay, that was a costly learning lesson.
Yes.
Now let's learn something more.
That is beautiful. You know, I'm going to add to it. And these are from some of those lessons I learned then.
Right.
And I'm curious if this is going to resonate or if you have any comment on it. One of which is I remember a conversation with Nancy Reynolds where in a management meeting, I was taking the approach of representing the employee as if kind of like a union rep. And I felt that my role in the meeting was I'm representing the employees here. And after the meeting, she corrected me and she pointed out, your role isn't here to advocate for them. Your role is to understand what's needed of the company and be the ambassador, the messenger to the line people, as you were referring to them, to help them actually achieve whatever goals the company is needing of them, what's expected of them. And that was very interesting to me because it, first of all, helped me realize who's paying my paycheck.
Yeah.
And the second thing that I remember from that experience was the importance of numbers, managing by the numbers. And what it did, and I think I later learned this in other roles, but it was removing the emotions as it relates to running the business because of the human interaction and so forth, to really kind of come back to there's a personal side of the business. There's the person, the individual that's doing the job, but there's also the professional. Do they or don't they have the skills, the means to do what's expected and deliver as they're paid? How would you speak to, one, the idea of helping in management training, the person understanding who they represent? It's not the employee, it's the company as you described it. It's that fiduciary responsibility to the person that's investing, but also this idea of managing by the numbers. Do you have any thoughts on those two things?
Well, I do. First, I agree that we need to help line employees as well as stakeholders understand the fiduciary responsibility, understand we're here to create value for stakeholders.
Yes.
But at the same time, a good manager will not only represent capital and stakeholders' needs to the line employees, or the CEO's needs to the line employees that they're responsible for, but will also represent the needs of the line employees to higher order or upper division management. But you have to keep in mind what the responsibility is. You're not there to simply advocate for your line employees. You're there to support them. You're there to make sure that they are sufficiently productive so that profitability can take place in the firm. Now, as it pertains to what do I think we should be looking at here, and how to put this into a management training program.
Yeah.
I think a good management training program finds a way to put the trainees in the position of stakeholder, where they whether it's through case studies or simulations or spending time with the actual equity stakeholders, but put yourself in the position of the stakeholder. You've already likely been in the position of the employee.
Yeah.
You probably climbed the ranks to get to where you are, right?
Yeah.
Now put yourself in the position, or find a way to put you in the position of the stakeholder. And I promise you, it is a very different scenario. Going back to that Goldman Sachs program, there's an exercise in that program that kind of does this, and it's called You Are the Lender.
Okay.
And it takes these small business owners and say, okay, don't think of yourself as business owners for the next couple of hours. Think of yourselves as lenders, someone providing debt or credit capital to a business.
I remember
and
this.
Here is a business. Here are some business owners. How would you make the decision as to whether or not to give them a loan?
Yep.
What kind of a rate to extend your company, your bank, your credit union's capital to them? That makes them, even if it's just for half an hour or an hour, stop and think about the other side of the coin. And we can do that exact same thing with respect to equity stakeholders, with respect to families that own a business.
Yeah.
Put ourselves in their shoes for at least a few minutes and think about, what is it that they have at stake? How are they seeing this? How do they make decisions? And now, once I know that as a manager, I am better at doing that in their stead. I'm also probably better at understanding how to represent the line employees' needs to them.
Very good. So regarding this management training, let's
Yeah.
say, there are a few things that I want to really kind of highlight, and I'm going to see if you would add anything to it. One is the importance of key metrics,
Yes.
managing by the numbers, having every employee or department accountable for a specific quantifiable expectation. The second is tools. Do they have the tools to do the job, the means to actually accomplish what's expected? Do they have the training of those tools to actually do so competently? And then fourth, temperament. Are they happy? Are they feeling appreciated? Do they have purpose? And if the culture enables them to be successful, then ultimately you're more likely to see them achieve what's expected. Would you add anything more to those?
Well, you and I are both numbers guys.
Yeah.
We speak and work numbers all day, every day, truth be known, even in our sleep sometimes, right? So it's easier for us. It's comfortable for us. Not everyone is a numbers person.
Yeah.
But business owners, business managers need to understand that there are quantitative metrics behind everything that they're dealing with. And if they're ignoring those, if they're just hoping that they're back there floating along and they're going to be okay, they're going to get bitten at some point by the lack of focus they've put on these. You talk about getting to the point where you take some of the emotion out.
Yeah.
Well, you can do that very effectively when you stop and think about the numbers for not just a moment, but really seriously delve into the numbers. The numbers are behind all of the actions and activities, from the customer standpoint, to the line employee standpoint, to the management, and to the stakeholder standpoint. We can delve all of this, drive all of this down to numbers. We can make decisions through numbers. And that's all well and good. But we also have to be human beings.
Yeah.
People who understand numbers can apply humanity to decisions.
Nice.
People that simply are trying to be good human beings that don't understand the numbers make incorrect decisions day in and day out. That's all there is to it.
I like that. That makes it very simplistic, and I appreciate that. I'm going to now change the topic.
Sure.
You're also a successful business person.
Sometimes.
Well, more often than not.
Thank you.
And so the point I would like to transition to is you've run a very successful business. I'd like to talk about the entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah.
You've been in business, you're in academia now, but you were also an entrepreneur.
Yes.
What was it that caused you to want to go out on your own and start a business? And I'd like to talk about that mindset. What do you feel helped you be successful?
You know, it's interesting. If you and I had had this conversation 40 or 50 years ago, which sadly I'm old enough we could have had this conversation 50 years ago,
Yep.
I would have told you I had no meaningful desire to own my own business,
Okay.
to run a business. I wanted to be the guy could count on. I recognize it's a very sexist way of saying it, but I hope everyone understands.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily want to be or need to be the person in charge. I wanted to be the one that could be counted on.
Yeah.
And over a number of years of seeking to be that individual and having opportunities that were given to me because I had become that individual, I began to see there are great opportunities in business ownership. But for me, it needed to be more than that. It needed to also be coupled with an opportunity came in front of me that I didn't actually go looking for, but an opportunity to break away and create my own firm. And to have some support of resources that we developed over a period of years, have some support from a network of individuals in industry as well as mentors and family, et cetera, that could help support the fledgling new business. And I realized here was an opportunity, here was a set of resources. If I'm ever going to look myself in the mirror again, I need to take advantage of the opportunity and to see what I really did or didn't have. And I appreciate you saying that I've been successful. And yes, maybe more successful days than challenging days, and maybe more successes than problems, mistakes, or failures.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think any business person that has had more than about a minute's worth of experience has had both successes and failures. And all it takes in this economy, even today, to be successful is just to have been a little bit more successful than failure oriented.
Correct.
Just a little bit.
Just a little
It's a marginal issue.
Yeah. 51% of the time. All right.
There you go.
All right. So having been that entrepreneur and
Yes.
being successful, what do you feel are some of the characteristics that enabled you to be successful? You talked about the resources you had access to, the support, that network, but I'm talking more characteristics,
Yes.
more stamina and so forth. What do you feel enabled you to be successful where maybe others struggle?
I've never known a successful business person that wasn't a builder and a driver.
Okay.
I just haven't. And it doesn't mean that they're 24/7, 365, monomaniacal to the business's focus.
Okay.
But if you're very far away from that focus, if you're ignoring of emails, you're thinking about everything else and saying the business will come back Monday morning, I'm just ignoring it for days and days. I don't see that in successful business people. I see them being able to separate some, but it's always in the back because it is that business that is supporting everything else that's important to them. Their family, contributions that they may make to society, social impact work that they might do.
Yeah.
It's that business that stands behind all the rest of it that gives the opportunity to do all these other things. And so I find that people that are successful in business have a very good sense of the connection of themselves as human beings to those things that are important to them, to that which is supporting all of it. And there's a passion about keeping all of those active. I had someone tell me one time that you didn't need to be passionate about a given business to be an owner of a successful business, that business. And I disagreed completely.
Yeah.
I don't know that you can have the stamina. And stamina sometimes doesn't mean 50 hours a week.
Yeah.
Stamina means 80, sometimes 100 hours a week, most often not, of course.
Yeah.
And stamina means that you wake up and within a few moments you're thinking about it. You go to sleep and a few moments ago you were thinking about it. When you're at the movies, you're thinking about it. And you're also thinking about those you're with and everything else important to you.
Yeah.
But you've got room in your life for one more big important thing that is not a 40-hour week responsibility or commitment.
You know, I've asked this question of many people, and you've said the same word that most say. It's passion.
Yes.
They bring that energy that's contagious. It's what draws customers in. It's what draws the employees in to get excited about what they're a part of.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I think is very helpful is that business owner can bring that energy to that offering. And so that's very important. But what would you say about vision? What I'm hearing you say is that that business owner needs to be able to think ahead and be proactive about what's tomorrow going to look like. Would vision be a very important part of that success you've seen others experience?
Clearly. So when we talk about passion doesn't just exist in this moment now and in our past.
Yeah.
Passion exists as we think beyond this moment. And I think that's where passion and vision connect, is because we're thinking beyond where we are right now.
Yes.
you don't have to be the quintessential visionary of the world
Correct.
to run a successful business. But if you're not visualizing how this business and its successes or failures impact people's lives, yours, your children, your spouse, your partner, your other family members, your employees, your vendors, your customers. If you're not thinking about that, if you're not visualizing that and moving forward to help that be better, creating this vision in your mind of how can we capitalize on that, not just for me, not just for this equity stakeholder standpoint, but to improve lives generally. If you can do that, then you've transcended manager and you've become leader. Leaders include vision. Managers are fulfilling responsibilities.
I love that. It's an excellent summation of that point. I want to go to the next level. You had a successful business, but you also exited. You had a successful exit.
Yes.
I'm curious, for my listeners, what is something that told you it was time to exit? And what was it that helped you understand what you were willing to take to exit?
It's interesting. I talk to business owners all the time about this very issue, and what they need to be looking for. They'll tell them when it's time for them to exit or make a significant change.
Yeah.
And I think that when you get to a point where you find more frustrations in some of the details than you do elations in them, then you need to start thinking about it. In my case, I enjoyed the people that I worked with tremendously. In fact, even though I'm a numbers guy, I'm also a people person, which I know that there are many that would argue that point, but still, I think that that's true of me. And I loved the people in the business, but I was frustrated with sometimes some of the detailing of things that need to be done. I was tired of some of it.
Yeah.
When you've done something for 10, 20, or 30 years, in my case, you do get tired of some things. And I knew it was time to move beyond that or to move on.
Okay.
And in my case also, there was the resource set that helped me understand I could move on and still have a supported lifestyle. And I had a driving desire to accomplish more. And one of the things that I wanted to accomplish is, even though I had really enjoyed and respected the education I'd gotten from my undergraduate work at BYU many, many years ago, it took me to a certain level, and I knew that I stopped short of where I could go. And so I had, for many years, wanted to go back and earn a graduate degree of some kind, a master's or a doctoral degree. And here I saw the opportunity to step away from the business, step into that world, and earn a doctorate, in this case in economics, with the supposition that I would then return to private enterprise. I would return to either policy or to consulting, or sometimes maybe even go back into practice. I didn't do that. I ended up going into academia, and that was more surprising to me maybe than anybody else, because it was had never been my plan. But for me, it was a combination of, there were some things that I was just ready for a change. I could feel it, I could sense it, and the opportunity existed to execute against that change.
So I'm curious, when that exit presented itself, was it because you consciously had decided that was the next step, or was it something that presented itself unexpectedly and you took advantage of it?
A good question. I would have to say both.
Okay.
I mean, I was in the investment industry. The regulatory structure of the investment industry has become more and more and more onerous over the many years you and I have been in and around it.
Yeah.
And there was some of that I was done with. I was just done with it. And so that was happening at the same time that opportunity was presenting itself.
Okay.
And I was getting old enough that I realized, look, if I'm going to go and if I'm going to do something more, if I'm going to fill my mind and maybe my heart more than it has been, I better get at it, because I was already in my 50s. And so it's not like I was in my 20s or 30s doing this.
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure how you're going to answer this, but I'm going to ask it, and let's see where this may go. Working with many people who have sold a business, sometimes the opportunity presents itself. They have a very lucrative exit, and they don't have purpose afterwards. They didn't know what to do afterwards, and they fall into a state of depression. They're aimless as the fact that beforehand they had drive, they had purpose, and they were able to actually, find something to do every day because they were running a successful business. But now they don't have those elements, and they're finding at 11 o'clock in the morning, they're still in their pajamas. At 1 o'clock, they're wandering around the house wondering what to do. I get that when you sold the business, you had a little bit more purpose that you were able to
Yes.
direct. But did you ever experience that after the exit? Did you ever go through that point of misdirection? I don't know where I'm at. Or did you have something that you were quickly able to apply yourself to?
I was very fortunate. I never experienced that.
Okay.
I never felt as though there was the void. In fact, for me, if anything, there was just an increasing hunger, increasing desire to find and do more.
Excellent.
In some respects, Roger, I'm not a terribly ambitious guy. No, I say that I don't need big riches. I live in a modest home. I enjoy some nice things, but I don't need to have the big stuff.
Okay.
At the same time, there's a lot I want to accomplish. And the older I've gotten, the more that those accomplishments tend towards social impact work, nonprofit work and such, in part because I've been very fortunate. I'll say that I've been very blessed, and I'd like to find ways to make that worthwhile and to give back.
Okay.
But to your point, I think anybody that's about to exit a business needs to have what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
Because if they don't, they're going to be on the couch eating bonbons, and within a couple of years, they're going to be gone. They're going to be done.
Yeah. I completely agree with that,
Yep.
and I've seen it. All right. The next thing is regarding academia.
Yeah.
There's the old phrase, those who can't
Yep.
teach, those, okay. So the point is you're in academia. You went in
Yeah.
there, got your doctorate.
Yes.
Congratulations, by the way. Well done. The point is what's different about academia than real world running the business as an operator or as an entrepreneur?
So to begin with, when I stepped into academia, I looked at it as I look at most other businesses and found myself constantly saying, this is no way to run a business.
Yeah.
And had voices around me saying, Rick, this is not the kind of business you think it is. This is different. Don't think of it that way. It took me a long time to make that transition. I mean, upwards of 5 years.
Wow.
To make that transition. That was very frustrating for me. But I would tell you that I grew up with the same saying in the back of my head, those that can do and those that can't teach.
Yep.
And when I stepped into a teaching role, which happened to have been because a wonderful gentleman by the name of Tom Maloney, one of my great mentors in my life, assigned me to teach a labor economics course. He knew I was interested in labor economics.
Okay.
He assigned me to teach this class. I thought, well, fine, I'll do that. I had to do it as part of my program. I loved it.
Wow.
What I realized I loved was taking the opportunity to share business experiences and perspectives that I'd gained over a number of decades with those who had those decades in front of them rather than in back of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved the exploration. I loved the sharing. I loved some of the hunger, both on my side of the coin as well as on theirs, and realized, the best people in academia are those that have a drive to share and those who have already done what they're talking about. Because now you can help somebody go and trod that path on their own. If you've simply been in a textbook, and those out there that are academicians that maybe have not worked in the real world, please don't be offended as I say this, but if you've not been in the seats, if you've not had to have the responsibilities, if you've not put something at risk, it is really hard to deliver the best you can. So to the extent that I was successful or have been successful as an educator, it's because I've had perspective and stories to share, without which I would simply have been a textbook, and nobody needs another one of those.
I like this. This is really good. So now with that perspective of being successful in business, being a successful entrepreneur, now being so successful as you have been in academia, what is it that you find is a myth about what you do? When somebody meets you, what do you think they misunderstand about who is Rick?
Yeah, it's interesting. People in my neighborhood suppose, I go to school. I spend, during a week, I might spend 10 hours in a classroom, maybe 12. Well, that's a pretty cush job, and I get paid a full-time income. In fact, it's probably a really high income. All of that are myths.
Okay.
I don't know educators that are serious about what they're doing that spend less than 50 or 60 hours a week. I just don't. And education, as many of us understand, even at the higher education level, isn't necessarily lucrative compared to using the same skill sets in private enterprise.
Correct.
but many people think that it is. So those myths are there. They think that you're in the ivory tower and you're there warping little minds. The fact of the matter is that the vast majority of people in education are there to share. They're not getting riches. They probably are working many more hours than anyone would ever expect, and they're putting it all out there. You're in front of a small group of people for a limited number of hours a week, and you must impart to them in that time frame everything you can about the industries that they're stepping into, the subject matter that they're dealing with, not just the jots and the tittles, not just the methods and the metrics and the numbers, but the ability to interpret, the ability to suppose beyond the moment, the ability to make decisions, meaningful decisions that are far-reaching in many cases. You don't do that by just punching a clock.
Yeah. Running an accounting school, I can relate.
Of course.
One of the things that's very apparent is even within my own family, you ask my children what I do, and it's like, he goes to school, he teaches at school. It's just far from the truth. There's a lot of invested interest in the individual student. They're learning. You're trying to impart this education, this wisdom you have of years of experience in the words you're using, the exercises you're providing, the instruction you're giving. All of that is in an effort to try and take what you've gleaned over the years into that gem of information that they're hopefully gleaning something from. But that's the hope.
That's it.
Yep. There you go. All right. So what's a lesson you'd give to my listeners as it relates to business, both as accounting professionals running their own companies, but at the same time as they're working with their clients? What is it that you're hoping that the accounting profession is bringing to small business owners?
So I hope accounting professionals, and I know that you work with many excellent ones, recognize their highest value isn't by counting beans. It's not by having debits on the left or credits on the right. It's by helping their clients interpret, understand, and look forward to what they can accomplish beyond this moment, especially in an age in which AI, artificial intelligence, is starting to replace some of the menial, some of the audit functions, some of the even financial statement functions, starting to replace some of that. Our job in this industry, in your industry, is to do more by augmenting what we do with those new technologies, not being afraid of them, not being Luddites, by embracing them and seeing to it that we can utilize that as a foundation, as a platform, and now we can deliver more. I think that this is the age of an accountant really as a consultant, not as a bean counter. We've been forced to be bean counters to some degree, even in recent decades. This is an era in which that must be left behind, that must be integrated into technology and innovation, and we must become trusted professionals, consultants.
I love that. That is great advice. So what is something you're curious about now that you have this experience behind you? What's on the forefront of what's next that excites you?
Yeah, good question. So as we've alluded, I've recently made a transition from being in the delivery side of academia as a professor at Westminster University, where I've had a wonderful experience and can't say enough good about the organization and institution, to being part of leadership in Western Governors University, which is the largest university in the country. I look at this and say, how do we need to disrupt higher education to meet the needs, not of this decade, but the next decade and the one after that and the one after that? What do we need to do? How do we shake things up so that we make it more affordable, more accessible, more applicable? How do we change our paradigms to recognize that it maybe isn't simply your run-of-the-mill bachelor's degree, 4-year degree that everybody out there needs in order to have a satisfactory life? They don't. What they need is more education so that they can then use that to leverage greater lifestyle, greater satisfaction. As a plumber, people wonder, do I really need any higher education? And I would say if you're a plumber, an electrician, driving a truck, whatever it is in the trades, you need more education because you need to be able to find ways to better enjoy the opportunities given to you to take advantage of the richness of what's around you And you can't do that when you're just dealing with the hammer and the nail. You can do that when you think, what can I do with these resources? How can I utilize the experiences to make myself and maybe those in a household I might be responsible for happier, more satisfied? So how do we disrupt things? How do we make it ever more accessible, approachable, and affordable so that not just those that are willing to go into debt or not just those that have come from well-heeled households can afford to do this?
Yeah.
Let's make sure, let's democratize it even more.
Yeah. One thing I would add to that is I think curiosity needs to play into it. If we could just somehow get people excited about education and learning so that it's not an obligatory step that they're just going through as a way of checking off something, but literally it's a thing that they're excited about and they're eager to learn. And we as institutions need to make the learning fun and enjoyable. So it's kind of a, let's meet in the middle. You be curious and I'll make it interesting. So.
Well, and you and I have both experienced this, and I'm going to gather that virtually everybody that would be listening to this today has also experienced this. It frustrates us no end when we're dealing with someone who evidences an inability to think.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about IQ here. I'm talking about a willingness and an ability to think things through. Education, higher education, a college degree, better than anything else, teaches us how to think.
Yeah.
And if that's all you get out of it, you've gotten a tremendous amount out of it.
Yeah. There's a book I remember that was, I dare say in one of my top 10, it's critical thinking. And it's basically that. It's how do you process information and how do you get to at least some decision-making abilities? So that's very good. All right. I'm going to share with you a quote that I believe you're familiar with. I trust you're familiar with, and I'm going to couple it with a question. There's a phrase that I was raised with that said, no success can compensate for failure in the home.
Yes.
And success oftentimes requires sacrifice. What do you feel as to family, but also at the same time, the sacrifices that were needed to be made for the successes you experienced?
You know, you're now asking the question that I ponder all the time. You know, what did I sacrifice? What did I leave on the table? And during the years that I was spending many, many hours away from my family. I have a wife whom I adore, a beautiful wife. I have 4 children who are the lights of my life. My baby is in her 30s at this point. I wonder virtually every day what opportunities I missed. Now, at the same time, I can tell you that I went nights without sleep so that I could take advantage of opportunities with my children. I forewent different things that were important to me just as an individual so that I could do things that I knew were important to them. I wasn't perfect at it. I'm not perfect at it, but I was conscious of it. And I think that's an awful lot of the equation. You've got to be conscious of it, and you've got to be willing to always be on the side of the ledger where you're giving a little bit more to them than to anything and everything else. That is tough. I've flown across the country to be able to attend parent-teacher conferences or to go to a dance recital with my daughters. You do the things you need to. I've gotten in a car and driven 12 hours to take somebody to somewhere in California so they can meet an appointment. You make those sacrifices for them, while also recognizing that sometimes you're sacrificing time with them because it is hard to do everything.
Yeah.
And then finding the quiet moments at night, going and sitting on the edge of a bed and just talking about your day or theirs, finding the opportunity to commiserate with them when it's something that they're feeling bad about and you're kind of wondering why, but commiserate with them just so they know you're there with them.
Yeah.
And it's also helping them understand, look, I have multiple responsibilities. And one of those is seeing to it that there's a home, food, clothing, medical opportunities, etc. It's a balance. But you've gotten at the thing that worries me more than anything else.
Okay. Well, I'm going to lean into that a little bit.
Okay, thanks so much.
You're very welcome. You've got a wonderful wife. So I'd like to wonder, How has her support been instrumental in the successes you've been able to accomplish?
So my wife and I met as college students at BYU many, many years ago. And as we graduated, after a very short period of time, she then was able to stay home and care for our children. So her job was that, and to maintain and manage our household through the raising of those 4 children. And it wasn't until after our 4th child was well into high school that she went back into the workforce. During those years, I could not have done what I did. I could not have spent the time, risked the capital, taken the personal expense, and I don't mean financial expense, the expense to me as a human being, without her being there to where I knew that she was with the kids, she was in the household. She expected me to be home, virtually every night.
Yeah.
And I guess I'd have to change that every night that I was in town.
Yeah.
She knew I came to that home. I didn't go anywhere else. I didn't go out and play with the boys. I managed my responsibilities. I did what I needed to do, and I did what I loved doing as well. Mm-hmm. Without her being there to do those things, we would have had a very incomplete household. But that extended to her being the one that I could lay in bed alongside of at the end of the day and talk about things that worried me, mm-hmm. that excited me, that I saw as opportunities, that I was afraid of, and to kind of be that counselor, if you will. And I think if she was listening to this right now, she would say, "Who are you talking about?" But if she really stopped to think about it, we had those conversations. Then we had one of those conversations this morning.
Okay.
And we've had that partnership. In some respects, my wife and I live very separate lives. She's very involved in her business. I'm very involved in my business, if you will.
Yep.
And we see each other a lot on the weekends and not much otherwise. Uh-huh. But we know that we are committed to each other. My children, as they were growing up, and even now, know that I am committed to them. And if push comes to shove, I'm going to them. I recently had an opportunity to break away from everything I was doing and run to Massachusetts because I had a daughter who was having a problem. Mm-hmm. And dad needed to be there, partially for dad, and partially for what had been a little girl decades ago. Yeah. That daughter, as well as my other daughters and my son and my wife, know that if I'm faced with that kind of a decision, that's what I'm going to do. And that business will get set aside. Mm-hmm. But there might be a few minutes here and there where their needs, which are sometimes important, sometimes trivial, might need to be set aside.
Interesting. You didn't so much just say it, but it's the phrase I use, and I'm hearing it in what you're sharing, and it's family first.
Family first.
It's if they want to play the card, they can play it, and I'm there. Yeah,
that's exactly really right.
The thing I'd like to then kind of dovetail off of this is what did you hope, or now that your children are so much older, what do you believe they took watching you do what you did? What do you hope they gleaned as they witnessed you as the father going out there and being successful in business and so forth?
And you know this because you've raised a family now as well. I wanted my children to gain the sense that hard work pays off, that pursuing things about which you're passionate gives you great satisfaction, and you must be able to be independent. Those are really the 3 things that I needed them to think of from the world standpoint. Mm-hmm. I mean, there were things that has to do with deity and personal relationships that we dealt with as well that are terribly important in my household. But those things from the worldly standpoint. Yeah. And if you're successful at that as a parent, it kind of bites because I now have 4 children that are fiercely independent. They need me about as much as, well, they barely need me at all, except for every once in a while in a moment. And they know if they do, I'm going to be there. But they're extraordinarily independent, enough so that they move to other parts of the country. They believe it or not, make decisions without me better than they would have made them with me. So, I want them to know those things, and I think they know them. Interestingly enough, my child that has been most like me in pursuing independent business and entrepreneurship is the last one I would have expected to do it.
Interesting.
I thought she was going to be more like her mom and be very creative and she has much to our delight, surprised us, and she's fiercely independent. And I love that I have 3 bright, beautiful, independent daughters and a fierce son who will look anything in the eye and say, okay, let's get it done.
I love that. That's powerful. You said a word when you were describing love, if I could reflect back on that. And coincidentally, it's the same word I use. And let me give it context. I've asked people in many conversations when I'm talking about love, it's going to be an interesting conversation, but I asked them to use a word other than love to define what that means to them. And I'm curious what that word is as a synonym. And in relationships, it's very curious to me what the partners will say. I choose the word committed.
Yeah.
When I look at my wife, I know she is committed
Yep.
to me, and I am committed to her. And it's not to say that's the word that love is for everyone. I've heard so many other wonderful synonyms to say what love means to them, but committed. There's no doubt in my mind whether or not she's committed. I don't have to wake up every morning and wonder whether or not she's going to be there when I get home. I don't have to question whether or not she's going to come through and support or whatever. She's committed, and myself likewise. And so as hard or as difficult things may become, there's just no doubt as to whether or not she's committed, nor am I. And that's one of the things that I think is powerful. And you used that word, so it resonated with me. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, being in the university setting and dealing with so many young students, and my students typically are from 18 to 24 years of age.
Okay.
Every once in a while, we'll have these conversations. Somebody's getting ready to get married or thinking about that next big part of their life. And I help them understand that, look, when we're very young, we meet someone, we become attracted. There's the instinctual attractions, and some of that we refer to as love. There is the desire to spend time with and to become close to and bond with, and some of that we refer to as love. But at the end of the day, love is about commitment. When you are committed to being committed, that's when you're ready for a marriage relationship. I've been married for 45 years. You've been married very, very nearly the same, if I recall correctly.
Over 3 decades, yes.
Yeah. And the trick to this is commitment. On any given day, I adore in every sense my wife. And on any given day, I know she'd just soon drop kick me. But every night when we're in the same city, we're in the same bedroom. When we every morning we get up together and move about our day, because that's what you do, and nothing gets in the way of that.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. So, Rick Haskell, what do people misunderstand or maybe don't realize about you? What is that one thing that you wish people probably knew?
Yeah, good question. Well, I think one of the things that is beyond some of what we've talked about is that faith is a tremendously important part of my life, and a relationship with deity is part and parcel of who and what I am. Beyond that, I live in, or have for about the last 10 years, lived in kind of an interesting dichotomy. Westminster University is understood regionally to be a relatively liberal and liberal arts institution.
Okay.
I live in a neighborhood in Sandy, and Sandy is a bedroom neighborhood of Salt Lake City in Utah, is a relatively conservative environment.
Yeah.
People on my campus at Westminster, where I would come every day, see me as being the fire-breathing conservative dragon. People in my neighborhood see me as being this flaming, liberal, bleeding heart liberal.
Okay.
Not recognizing that the reality is I am simply a pragmatic guy and a centrist. And I think there are more of us in this country than anything else, truth be told. So what do people need to know about me? I am not an ideologue. I'm not the liberal on one side or the dragon conservative on the other, but I am someone who adores his family. I have tremendous respect for and faith in deity, and I believe in solutions and pragmatism.
Very nice. Let's go back to your youth. Give me a favorite childhood memory.
I'm fortunate, Roger, to have had two very distinctive parts of my youth. And so I'm going to have to reference each one of them for a moment. One was a tremendous amount of my early upbringing, my early experience up until about 8 years of age, came at the hands of a maiden aunt and a grandmother who had a lot to do with my upbringing and a lot to do with who I ultimately became. I remember walking down some little streets in Santa Cruz, California,
Okay.
going from my grandmother's home to a market, which probably was 12 or 13 blocks away. And I remember walking along those streets, holding the hand of my Aunt Evie, who was not my mother, but I was the closest thing to a child that my Aunt Evie ever had. She was what we would think of today as being developmentally delayed. She was a wonderful woman, and I was the closest thing to a child that she'd ever had.
Mhm.
And even today, I will sometimes think about how it felt to walk down the street holding the hand of my Aunt Evie.
Hmm.
On the other side, I had a family. I had a brother and 3 sisters. I had a mother and father and a household that I had more engagement from my parents, a little bit older than some might, maybe even a lot less as I got older still. For me, the best parts of my childhood had to do with my brother, whom I have always looked up to, and my 3 sisters, who we lovingly refer to as Flora, Fauna, and Merriweather. They are the aunties. And I can remember moments where we, as a group of children, for whatever reason, had to coalesce. And to me, that was home. I mean, my mother and father certainly had a lot to do with that, but they had issues and problems, as so many do. But I found the strength and the love in the embrace of my siblings, and to this day have a tremendous relationship with them and adore them.
That's wonderful. Again, it circles back to family.
Yeah, for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Favorite holiday movie?
Oh gosh. Well, I don't go see a lot of movies.
I didn't take you to be one, so yeah.
Yeah.
You get to pick the holiday and the movie. It's pretty broad.
Well, there was a movie, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. It was the film that was the precursor to the Waltons, and Christmas came. And it was they lived in the South somewhere, it may have been Virginia or one of the Carolinas, and Christmas came, and they brought in the big Christmas tree, and they had the big family Christmas, and they were all together. I love Christmas.
Yeah.
I love Christmas because I love to see my children come down to the family room or the living room on Christmas morning, where Christmas has exploded underneath the Christmas tree. Even today, I love that.
Yeah.
So that movie, and I can't remember the name of it. Spencer's Mountain was the name of it.
All right.
And Earl Hamner wrote it, and it was a precursor to the television series The Waltons.
Interesting.
So that's probably my favorite movie for a holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Thank you. I'm reflecting on your comment earlier of a mentor. Who has been a mentor in your life, and in what way were they? And what I'm really looking for is, what did you take from them?
Yeah.
What was that lesson?
I've been fortunate to have many of them. I'm going to point to a group of people that have served a mentoring role. I served a mission for my church when I was younger. And at a point during that experience, had the opportunity to work with 6 or 7 men with whom I had tremendous affection and respect. And we worked very closely together. And fortunately, there are 6 of us that to this day still see each other often. They have been the best of my family, spiritual, and business mentors.
Interesting.
One whom I think you might know and remember is a gentleman by the name of Kirby Glad.
Oh.
I think you knew Kirby well in business.
Yeah.
And Kirby was one of those. Mark Hobbins, Lane Booth, David Gardner, Kevin Riddle, or some of the others that we see each other very often. And they have been my mentors, more so than they realize. I have patterned so much of my life. No, I've tried to pattern so much of my life based upon the lessons that they have taught me. I adore them.
That's wonderful.
I respect them.
Yeah. You brought up the mission. You've mentioned earlier that you're involved with nonprofits.
Yes.
How is service a part of what you do?
So I've been very fortunate. I mean, I'm not a tremendously wealthy man, but I've been very fortunate in my career. I've had some interesting resources, interesting experiences. And if you looked at where I came from and where my brother and sisters and I came from, you would never have expected any of us to experience the level of success in life or in business or in families that we've experienced. I think we have a responsibility to give back. I don't think we necessarily have an obligation. I don't think that society has the right to thrust or hoist it on us.
Yeah.
But I think we have an opportunity to give back. And maybe we internalize that as an obligation,
Yeah.
but I think it's an opportunity. So I think when we get to a point where we have the time resource, maybe the financial resource, to turn around and invest some of it back into society, whether it's helping a small business that's owned by an underrepresented household, maybe working with an affinity chamber of commerce that is part of a subset of our larger business society, or just going out and finding a way to give a hand to someone that's not looking for a handout, but could sure use a hand.
That was very well said. So I'm going to now turn the table and let you pick a topic. What I'm looking for here is something that resonates with you. So I'm going to give you 4 topics.
Okay.
You can pick a 5th if there is.
Okay.
And I want you to pick which one you feel would be appropriate to address right
Okay.
now. Faith, music, family, or workaholic life balance kind of thing.
So we've talked a lot about family.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going to stay away from the workaholic life balance kind of thing because
All right.
I don't always end up on the right side of that equation.
Okay.
I try to.
All right.
I'm going to go to faith.
Please.
You know, I did serve a mission for my church, and a relationship with deity is extraordinarily important to me. A recognition that there is a power greater than ourselves is meaningful to me. And yes, my own particular religion, the religion that I have embraced, is important to me. But at the same time, what's really important to me is that people recognize that faith is a power, and that the exercise of faith makes them stronger, makes them better. Working in academia, there are many that would look at me and hear that kind of a statement and say, that's weak-minded. In fact,
Okay.
I've been told that before.
Okay.
A faith in something else, which there may be difficult scientific proofs of, or limited scientific proofs of, would say, you know, you're just weak-minded. You're not intellectually strong. And I so disagree with that. I think that if anything, that being willing to embrace faith means I am willing to recognize where my intellect stops
Okay.
and more infinite intellect picks up that I can't maybe completely understand with my very finite mind. I'm okay to turn over things at that point. And some people have a hard time doing that. I think that those of us that really become happy in this life and that don't find fear in the prospects of the end of our lives are those who have been comfortable with the exercise of faith and that recognize that it's a power. If I could wish anything on humanity as a whole, it would be to have a greater level of faithfulness. And faithfulness doesn't mean your faith versus mine.
Yeah.
It means our exercise of faith. I have an opportunity to travel rather a lot. I've been in recent years in what we would think of as Islamic countries rather a lot.
Okay.
And I'm always impressed with how much we have in common
Yeah.
with that particular faith, and of which there are many sects in that faith, as well as how much we have in common with all other Christian sects and those in other parts of the world that aren't Islamic and aren't Christian. We have so much in common with them. Much more than we have in discord with them.
Yeah.
And at the core of it is a willingness to set ourselves aside, recognize I am not all that important, I am not all that smart, and that there might be something bigger, better, and more important than me.
That is beautiful.
Anyway, that's me.
So I'm going to take that now and put
Okay.
now a business side to it.
Yes.
How does a faith and belief in a deity impact the business decisions that you make?
You know, I've known a lot of people over the years who have tried to integrate faith in business rather a lot, that will be very prayerful about any relevant business decision. I'd like to tell you that I am thinking in those terms sometimes, but more often than not, I defer to the numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's kind of the guy you and I very, very often are. But in order to be an innovative business owner, in order to put one foot in front of the other on any given morning, especially the hard ones, you have got to have faith. Now, maybe it's not faith in deity that you've got to always have.
Yeah.
It is about faith in there is the ability to have, do, and be something better. to make a better life for myself, my family, and those families for which I have some modest or significant responsibility. When I say families, I mean individuals.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily mean the traditional family unit. Family can be so many different kinds of combinations of people. But I think you've got to have faith. Those people that can't exercise faith can't continue to step forward when things are difficult. They clam up, they recede, they stop. I know very few people that have that kind of faith in the future for the sense of business and progression that don't also have faith in a deity as well. I find that they go hand in hand almost always.
Very nice.
Not 100%, but almost always.
You know, I'm going to add to what you were just sharing, just a few things. One, I like to couple faith with hope. When you're in business, there's always that hope that things are going to get better, that the struggles that we're facing will improve and so forth. But I'm going to couple with it a thing that I think is faith related in business, which is the principle of being honest in your business dealings. I do believe that there is an accountability that comes in business. And even though I might be smarter or may have an opportunity, but to take advantage of someone else in a business situation, I just think is inappropriate. And so, I mean, there's the savviness and there's the win-win philosophy, but to realize that one day I might be held accountable for some of the things that I've done, I would never want to be accused of putting somebody in a hardship position intentfully, with intent and so forth.
To knowingly, purposely, and intentionally have something over another person, I just find no joy in that.
Yeah.
In fact, I think we call that being a bully in some respects, right?
Yeah.
And so there's no virtue in that.
Yes.
You've got to leave good opportunities for both sides of any transaction. Otherwise, you will never come back and transact again.
Yeah.
With that same individual.
Yeah.
You'll never gain and build that trust again. There's a book written by a gentleman named Rodney Stark.
Okay.
And the book is called Victory of Reason. And it's talking about Christianity and the virtues of Christianity. But what it's really talking about is some of the common sensicality of Christianity and the application of reason within our lives.
Okay.
I think we can apply that to business. The victory of reason. It's not reasonable to say, I'm going to transact with you to the point where I get everything I possibly can out of your hide for me and leave nothing for you.
Yes.
Because if I do that, then what have I left you with? The inability to ever transact with me again. I don't have a partner. I don't have somebody that I can work with again. I have somebody that I've beaten down. That's not successful.
Yeah.
And I don't know any successful business person that doesn't try to leave something of value on the table for the other side of the transaction.
Yeah. There's a principle in our business. A good deed a good deal rather is only a good deal if it's a good deal for both parties.
Absolutely.
So that's first of all, that win-win philosophy. The second part of it is an abundance mindset. I don't have to go into business or into life presuming that for me to get ahead, you have to be taken advantage of, fail. It's not a one-upmanship of someone. It is, I can win and you can win. There's enough for both of us. And so I think with that abundance mindset, it puts you in a position where you don't feel so eager to take advantage of the other person. So anyways, I like this. This is a good conversation here. The last thing I'd like to do is some rapid fire questions. Just some quick, just real quick little things.
Pull out the Rorschach cards?
Yeah, well, we're going to make it a little simple. I'm just going to throw these at you and you're going to pick one, all right? So I'm going to start with read a book or watch a movie.
Read a book.
Easy. Money or fame?
Oh, I don't care much about either one. How about love and respect?
Okay. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Ooh, I sometimes know the difference between them. Star Wars.
Thank you. Introvert or extrovert?
Probably extrovert.
Disneyland or Disney World?
My best view of Disneyland is in my rearview mirror.
All right. Okay. Drive or fly?
Oh, drive.
Okay. Breakfast or dinner?
Dinner.
Beautiful. One of the things that I've really enjoyed about our conversation is the fact that we've covered both business and personal.
Yeah.
What is a question that you thought I was going to ask that I didn't?
I'm not sure. I came in here with very few preconceptions. I didn't suppose we would get as much into personal discussion,
Yeah.
and I'm so grateful that we did,
Yeah.
because the relationship you and I have had over the years, although has not been terribly constant, it has been a constant.
Yes.
Has been just as much about the personal. We were neighbors for a number of years.
We were.
As well as business associates. We've had the employee manager relationship, and probably going both directions. I'm glad you were able to take us there.
Well, thank you. And I have to tell you, I probably think of you more than you think of me, because that home that you lived in, I drive past it all the time, and I do think of you.
A cute little house in the orchards in American Fork.
That's right. So fond memories of that. And honestly, I know that in my dealings, I was an employee in many cases where you were the manager, the VP. So I saw you of one, you saw me as many. I was probably lost in the crowd in many ways, but you're right. It's been a constant, nice relationship.
Yes.
It's been a friendship. And when we saw one another in Palmyra, I was overjoyed that you not only recognized me, but were willing to step out and capture my attention and say hello.
Absolutely.
That was beautiful. So that meant a lot to me. Real quick, do you have anything that you would suggest my listeners subscribe to?
So I'm a big believer in objectivity.
Okay.
I listen to several podcasts, and there's one that I listen to. It's all about objectivity.
Okay.
And I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's going to take me a moment. Maybe you can put it in the notes for the podcast, and maybe even find a link to it.
Okay.
But there's a woman who is a former attorney, and she looks at the political and economic events of the day and tries to help us understand them without ideology and without an axe to grind. And she looks at the myths of them, and she looks at the realities of them. And so I like listening to objectivity. I come from the era, as do you, and to some degree, of Walter Cronkite, where we knew that we could watch that news and we weren't getting a spin. Or at least we weren't getting a big spin. We knew that we were listening to someone who was values based, but wasn't going to impose his values on us other than objectivity. So podcasts and objectivity, and the name of it's going to come to me, and I'm so sorry that it's not yet.
That's all right. You're going to have a moment to think, because I'm going to come back to you for a closing thought.
Okay.
And I'm going to wrap this up. And when we come back, if you perhaps remember, you can mention it then. But think of a closing thought to my audience as to what it is you'd like to impart with. But for my listeners, let me kind of summarize this conversation that I've been so excited to have. Rick, as you can clearly see, is someone I've known for a number of years, and I have a good deal of fond memories with him, and more importantly, respect and truly see him as a mentor. One of the things that I'd like to start with is the fact that he was able to share at the very beginning some wonderful insights as it related to management training. I feel that whether it's applicable to ourselves or those that we're working within our own firms, those principles that we were talking about are so key. We were talking about key metrics. We were talking about the numbers, things that are perhaps natural to us, but more importantly, we were able to get into kind of the philosophies of business and running it. We then transitioned into obviously running the company. And that was one of the things that I thought was very helpful, is to share his entrepreneurial journey and the fact that he did actually thrive and run a successful business, clearly coming to the point of having a successful exit. And I think that's something to be very proud of. But he quickly, rather than finding himself in a fog, he was able to apply himself and move into academia. And I think that was a beautiful transition. Getting his doctorate in economics, that's something that should be recognized. But clearly then staying in that space and trying to impart his wisdom as it relates to being a business leader, being a successful entrepreneur to the younger generation. I think that's something that should be applauded. Now, there is something that I also want to draw attention to, and it was his application of the 10,000 small business world and what's going on there, and his contributions as it relates to the finance portion of that training. Just to talk about business owners and how so many of us get into business because we love what we do, we're good at what we do, but sometimes find the numbers to be elusive. And that's where, as accounting professionals, we can do such a better job of helping our clients understand the numbers and how it relates to their business and how they can leverage that information, the capital they have, to even be much more successful and more confident in their decision making. The other thing I'd like to really focus on is the fact that Rick was able to bring in family, talk about family as it related to the support he received from his lovely wife and also his children, and how he was able to see that even with the sacrifices that he was making, that family still does come first. We also dove into the fact that he builds a foundation of everything that he's doing on faith, that he has a belief in deity, and he finds that that's a critical or essential part of his success. And I think that's very respectful. The last thing is that of service, having that service mindset, that it's not obligatory, but it is an opportunity to give back and perhaps impart some of the wisdoms that we've had with those others. And to, whether finding time or monetary means to do so is obviously a blessing, and it's something that we should actually aspire to do. So I thought this was a wonderful conversation. I appreciate him opening up, being vulnerable, and more importantly, sharing the wisdom as he always does with us today. So Rick, what would you like to end on? Well,
the name of the podcast is Unbiased, by the way.
Done.
And thank you for giving me a moment.
Yes.
I think if I'm going to have a parting comment, it is take the opportunity to always be learning. That doesn't mean necessarily always going to school. Yeah. Always be learning. I drive about half an hour each direction when I go to my office on campus every day. And I listen to books. I go through 2 or 3 books a month, and I'm not listening to fiction, and I'm not listening to poetry. I'm listening to history, biographies. I stay away from political commentary for the most part, but I like to learn things about things that have happened.
Yeah.
So always be learning. And in recent years, I've been able to extend that to stepping outside of myself, outside of my culture, and traveling to other cultures, and just trying to absorb other cultures.
Yeah.
And finding the richness in the diversity of other cultures. And as I get to then come back to our society, which is increasingly a diverse cultural society, mm-hmm. I find great richness in that. Being willing to find the richness through faith, through gaining knowledge, and through living diverse experiences, I think leads to a much more satisfying lifestyle.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. So for my listeners, obviously, I'd like to encourage you, if you haven't already, subscribe to the show. We'd love to have you as a subscriber to listen to this each and every week. We have new episodes where I bring on the experts, those individuals that have experience and more importantly can impart wisdoms to us to have the premier accounting firm in our area and better service our clients. So I invite you to subscribe now and hear what else we have to share. Also, I want to encourage you to go to universalaccounting.com, and there in the navigation, find the podcast section. We've compiled a number of highlights, putting them together in playlists that you can binge listen to. Those are meant to actually address various topics that you may be dealing with today, such as marketing, selling, pricing, onboarding clients, training your staff, perhaps even mental health, client retention, all those types of things that I feel are very appropriate and applicable to what we're trying to do to have the premier accounting firm in our area. In addition, while you're there on the site, register for GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference that we have for owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses. It's here where we gather together, you and me, basically so that we can actually meet with those who are our peers, learn from them, see what they're doing right, and as we meet with our peers, become inspired and more importantly, collaborate to better service our clients. We also hear from the experts, those individuals that are on stage that have basically words of wisdom as to what we can be doing to work on our business to grow and get the clients that we need to, the revenue that we're trying to aspire to have, better service our clients, and also work efficiently and profitably. So join me for GrowCon, and I look forward to seeing you there. The other thing I'd like to do is, if you'd like to know more about our programs here at Universal Accounting Center, that of becoming a professional bookkeeper, that of becoming a professional tax preparer or profit and growth expert, definitely check out universalaccountingschool.com. It's there that you'll find information regarding that and the other programs that we offer as a school to assist you so that you can confidently go out there and offer quality accounting services. So with all that being said, feel free to give us a phone call. You can reach us at 801-265-3777. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take care and have a great day.